As a lead software engineer at a prestigious tech firm, my life had been a meticulous, calculated climb to the top, a world built on logic, clean code, and predictable outcomes. Every problem had a solution, every variable had a value. But this day was different. My world was no longer just about work, it was about her. Her name was Chloe, an architect with a brilliant mind and a laugh that could make me forget every bad thing that had ever happened. Our new relationship, a mere 6 months old, was a vibrant contrast to the toxic cloud that was my ex, Jessica. We were on the couch, wrapped in a comfortable silence that was punctuated by our quiet laughter as we scrolled through social media. The peaceful bubble we had built was suddenly and violently shattered. My phone vibrated with a jolt, a jarring intrusion into our serene moment. A notification from Instagram. It was from Jessica. I had blocked her months ago on every platform, a digital exorcism to reclaim my life. But this was a direct tag from a new public account. My thumb hovered over the notification. I almost ignored it, but the chilling caption caught my eye, a simple string of text that felt like a physical blow. Heard you moved on. Not for long. My heart, a quiet drum against my ribs just moments before, stopped. A cold wave of dread washed over me, a familiar sickening feeling from the darkest days of my past. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my life was about to be turned upside down. I just didn't know how far she was willing to go. Before we go any further, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on more cases like this. Jessica and I had been together for 5 years. Our relationship was a classic on-again, off-again cycle, a volatile mix of passionate highs and dramatic lows that left me emotionally exhausted. I finally ended it for good a year ago when I realized her love was a form of control, a suffocating embrace that demanded my complete surrender. The emotional abuse was a constant undertow, a current of passive aggression and subtle threats that left me feeling like I was drowning. To escape, I had to change my phone number, move to a new apartment in a different neighborhood, and block her on every social media platform, a digital exorcism to reclaim my peace. I was so convinced I had left that part of my life behind that I let my guard down when I met Chloe. She was everything Jessica wasn't: kind, stable, and emotionally mature. Our relationship was the first one I'd ever been in where I felt completely at peace, where the silence wasn't filled with unspoken tension. We shared our lives openly, and I had no idea that my carefully constructed world was about to become a target for my ex. The problem was, I had forgotten about one small detail from the past. Jessica was an expert in social engineering, and she had all the information she needed to tear my life apart. She was a master of manipulation, and she had been gathering ammunition for months. Update 1. The first click. Digital impersonation and defamation. The first click was a chilling act of digital impersonation and defamation. The notification I received was a direct tag from a brand new Instagram account with a bizarre anonymous username, TruthTellerX. It felt like a punch to the gut. The account had only one post, an unflattering, grainy picture of me from years ago, clearly taken without my knowledge while I was asleep on a couch. The post felt like a violation of my personal space. The caption was pure, venomous defamation, a long, detailed story that accused me of being a serial cheater who had manipulated my way through every relationship, a toxic and emotionally abusive person who had stolen my ex's art and sold it for a profit. The post tagged Chloe, my new girlfriend, and 3 of her closest friends, as well as a few of my colleagues. My blood ran cold. I immediately reported the post and the account, but it was already too late. The comments were a firestorm, filled with Chloe's friends and even her family members, all asking her if the accusations were true. I called Chloe, but she didn't answer. The silence on the other end was more deafening than any scream. I knew I was in for the fight of my life. Update 2. The second click. Invasion of privacy and cyberstalking. The second click was a full-on invasion of privacy and an escalation of the cyberstalking. The account, which had been reported but not yet taken down, posted a second picture. It was a screenshot of a conversation between my friends and I from years ago, taken from a group chat on WhatsApp. The sight of it felt like a violation of my deepest trust. The messages were taken completely out of context, spliced and edited to paint me in the worst possible light. A simple, sarcastic comment about a movie was made to look like I was an emotionally abusive person. She had even doctored a few photos of me with my ex-girlfriend, adding fake captions and timestamps to make it look like I was a terrible person who had cheated on Chloe. This time, she didn't just tag Chloe and her friends. She also tagged my new girlfriend's parents and even my own sister. The cyberbullying was now a defamatory campaign, an all-out assault on my personal life and my reputation. The comments were coming in at a furious pace, a constant stream of questions and accusations. The silence from Chloe was a physical weight, a suffocating pressure that was more painful than any accusation. I sent a text to Chloe explaining the situation, but she didn't respond. I knew I was in for a long, hard battle, but I had no idea just how much I had to lose. Update 3, the third click, extortion and financial fraud. The final devastating click was the one that destroyed my career. The fake account posted a picture of my ex, who had claimed to be a victim of my alleged abuse. The caption, however, was what really did the damage. It was a long, detailed post that accused me of financial fraud and stealing company secrets. My ex had created a completely fictitious story, using a few details from my work life to make her lies sound more authentic. The post claimed that I had used company funds for my personal expenses and sold trade secrets to a rival company. The final blow was the tag at the end of the post, which tagged my current employer and my new girlfriend's father, who was also my boss. My heart sank. I had always been so careful to keep my personal life separate from my professional one, but my ex had found a way to merge them into a weapon. The comments were filled with people from my work, all of them questioning my integrity. I knew in that moment that she was not just seeking revenge, she was trying to destroy me. This was a clear-cut case of extortion, a woman who was willing to ruin my life for the simple pleasure of seeing me suffer. Update 4, the immediate fallout. My phone, which had been buzzing with notifications all afternoon, finally went silent. I was waiting for the inevitable call from my boss, a sense of dread pooling in my stomach with every passing minute. When my phone finally lit up with his name, the shock of it was almost as bad as the posts themselves. I had worked for this man for nearly a decade, and he had always been a mentor, a man who believed in my potential. Now I felt like a criminal on trial, and the jury had already reached its verdict. "Is any of this true?" he asked, his voice calm but firm, a terrifying blend of professional concern and personal disappointment. "No, sir," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of fury and despair. "This is a smear campaign for my ex. She's mentally unstable and she's trying to destroy my life." I tried to explain, to give him a brief history of our toxic relationship, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. He had known me for years, but he didn't know the full extent of my ex's obsessive behavior. He just saw the chaos, the drama, the potential for a public relations nightmare. "I'm sorry," he said, the words a physical blow. "We need to let you go. I can't have this kind of drama in my company. It's a breach of our social media policy, and it's a conflict of interest." My world, the one I had so painstakingly built, came crashing down. I had worked my entire life to get to this point, and it was all gone in just a few seconds. The man who had been so sure of his life, so content in his perfect little world, was now a hollow shell. My career was over. The silence that followed his words was more deafening than any accusation, a vast and terrifying emptiness where my future used to be. Update 5, the masterclass in manipulation. I knew I couldn't confront my ex directly. Her mastery of deflection and emotional manipulation was something I had witnessed many times before. She was an expert at twisting the narrative, making herself the victim and me the villain. I had to become a detective, to find undeniable proof of her malicious campaign. I went to the police, but they just looked at me with a weary, practiced skepticism. "Domestic dispute, sir. We can't do anything without a paper trail." I was at a dead end, and I was on the verge of giving up when I remembered a podcast I had listened to months ago about a retired police officer who specialized in cybercrime. He was a forensic investigator who had worked on a few high-profile cases, and he was my only hope. I showed him the screenshots of the posts, and he immediately saw the telltale signs of a targeted cyberstalking campaign. "This isn't just a random act of rage," he said, his voice a low growl, a professional calm that gave me a flicker of hope. "This is a clear-cut case of defamation and digital impersonation. We need to get a restraining order immediately." The words were a validation of my worst fears, but they also gave me a sense of purpose. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man on a mission. I wasn't fighting for my reputation anymore. I was fighting for my life. His words were a lifeline in a storm of deceit, and I held on to them with everything I had. Update 6. The digital breadcrumbs. The forensic investigator, a man named Marcus, was a professional, a no-nonsense detective with a weathered face and an unnerving calm. He knew exactly what to look for, and he found a treasure trove of digital breadcrumbs. My ex, in her narcissistic rage, had been careless. She had used a VPN to hide her IP address, a common tactic for online harassment. But she had made one critical mistake. She had signed into her own personal email account on the same network. Marcus, a man who had been a detective for 30 years, found the IP address, a digital fingerprint that tied the anonymous account directly to her. And with a simple subpoena to my ex's internet service provider, he had everything he needed to build a case. He also found a series of private messages between my ex and her friends on WhatsApp, a meticulous account of their conspiracy. They had discussed the plan to ruin my life, and they even had a name for it: Operation Takedown. The messages were a meticulous, step-by-step account of her plan, from the fake Instagram account to the defamatory posts. She had planned to use her friends as a way to get my new girlfriend to leave me. They had been discussing the plan for weeks, and they were all in on it. A silent, menacing army of women who were determined to ruin my life. My ex had even mentioned that she was getting a list of my work clients so she could try to get me fired. The thought of my professional life, my carefully constructed world, being a pawn in her little game was infuriating. The betrayal was not just a one-time event. It was a deep-seated conspiracy that had been going on for years. The man who had once been so sure of his life, so content in his perfect little world, was now a hollow shell, waiting for a simple email to confirm his worst fears. My mind was a storm of questions, a maelstrom of anger and disbelief. How could she have done this to me? How could she have been so cruel? The answers were right there, staring back at me from the screen, and I knew I was in for the fight of my life. Update 7. The confrontation. I knew I had all the evidence I needed. The forensic investigator had all the digital breadcrumbs. I had the screenshots of the posts, the IP address, and the private messages. The final act of this tragedy was about to begin. I called my ex and told her I wanted to talk. She was hesitant, but she agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in a neutral location. She was a beautiful woman, but her beauty was a mask for the monster that lurked beneath the surface. She sat across from me, a placid smile on her face, and I saw a woman I didn't know anymore. "Why are you doing this?" I asked her, my voice shaking with fury. "You have no idea what you've done. You've ruined my life." She just smiled, a cold, empty smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "You left me," she said, her voice a low growl. "You abandoned me. You were supposed to be mine forever, and you left me for her. I'll make sure you never have a life with anyone else." I just looked at her, and I saw a woman who was so consumed by jealousy and rage that she had become a monster. The words were a physical blow, a sudden, brutal sucker punch to the soul. I was no longer a victim. I was a man on a quest for justice. The silence in the room was deafening, a vacuum where a relationship used to be. The quiet was a testament to the death of our relationship, a silent tomb for all the lies and deceit. I just sat there, and I knew that I was finally free. Update 8. The legal battle. I didn't waste another second. The evidence was overwhelming, and I was armed with a righteous fury I hadn't known I possessed. I went to the police station with my lawyer and a thick folder of evidence, and I laid it all out for the officers. The first officer, a young man with a bored expression, looked at me with weary skepticism. But when he saw the folder, his expression slowly changed. Inside, I had everything. Meticulously organized printouts of the WhatsApp messages, a detailed timeline of the events, and a professional report from Marcus, the forensic investigator. The officer passed the file to his supervisor, a seasoned detective with kind, weary eyes, and she saw the truth instantly. The evidence was irrefutable. My ex was a brilliant criminal, but she was a sloppy one. In her narcissistic rage, she had used her own IP address, and she had made a series of mistakes that were about to cost her everything. The police department, in its long history of dealing with disgruntled exes, had never seen a case with so much evidence. My ex was charged with cyberstalking, defamation, and harassment. The man who had once been so sure of his life, so content in his perfect little world, was now a hollow shell. My career was over. The silence in the police station was a testament to the death of my life. Update 9. The shocking confession. The legal battle was long and arduous. It was a tedious process of depositions, legal motions, and countless hours spent with my lawyer. My ex, in her desperate attempt to avoid jail time, admitted to everything in a courtroom full of people, her voice a hollow shell of what it once was. She confessed to her long-standing cyberstalking and defamatory campaign, her voice shaking with a pathetic mix of fear and desperation. She told the court that she had been driven to it because of her overwhelming jealousy and sense of abandonment. She said she felt like I had taken everything from her, and she wanted to do the same to me. But the judge was not convinced. The prosecutor had found a long history of this kind of behavior, a pattern of harassment and defamation that had followed her from her past relationships. The judge sentenced her to a long time in jail, a decision that gave me a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. She was a woman who had tried to build her life on a foundation of lies, and now it was all crashing down around her. The courtroom was silent, a testament to the death of a lie. I was no longer a victim. I was a man on a quest for justice. Update 10. The financial fallout. The police had arrested my ex, but the damage was already done, and it was devastating. The lies had spread like wildfire through my professional and personal circles, and my reputation was in shambles. My friends, unsure of what to believe and uncomfortable with the public drama, had slowly faded away. Some gave me generic words of support, but most simply stopped returning my calls. The silence from Chloe, my new girlfriend, was the most painful of all. The accusations had been too much for her, a toxic wave she wasn't prepared to weather. She had broken up with me via a single final text message saying she needed time to figure things out, and she never responded again. I was at rock bottom, a man with nothing left to lose. My career was gone, my new relationship was over, and the people I trusted had abandoned me. But in that emptiness, a new kind of resolve took hold. I was going to make sure my ex paid for every single lie. I decided to sue her for financial damages, a civil lawsuit that was completely separate from her criminal charges. The process was cold, clinical, and devoid of the emotional chaos that had defined the past few months. I felt nothing as I sat through depositions, answered questions, and watched as my lawyer methodically calculated the loss of my income, the cost of therapy, and the legal fees. The court ultimately awarded me a large sum of money, a victory on paper. The day the check arrived, I held it in my hands, a thick, impersonal rectangle of paper that was supposed to represent justice. But the money did nothing to fix the emotional damage that had been done. It couldn't restore my shattered reputation, bring back my job, or mend my broken heart. The feeling was a hollow, empty void, a testament to the fact that some wounds run too deep for any monetary settlement to heal. I was a man who had lost everything, and I had to find a way to get my life back on track. I knew the real fight wasn't against her anymore. It was for myself. Update 11. The aftermath and the law. My life was a mess, but I was determined to find a way to get back on my feet. I started therapy, a difficult and often painful process of confronting the trauma and betrayal. My therapist, a kind and patient woman, helped me untangle the years of emotional abuse from Jessica and the deep-seated fear that had taken root in my life. I had to learn the hard way that a person can be living a life of deceit, and you'd never know it until one small, seemingly insignificant piece of evidence unravels the entire story. In my case, it was a simple Instagram notification. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the person who helped bring down a criminal. The legal process was a powerful lesson in justice. I had to testify in court, detailing every lie, every threat, and every instance of cyberstalking. The prosecutor used my evidence to build a case against her, a clear and irrefutable timeline of her malicious campaign. She was a woman who had tried to build her life on a foundation of lies, and now it was all crashing down around her. The judge's final decision, a long prison sentence, was not just a victory for me, but for all the people she had hurt. I had found justice not just for myself, but for the people who had been hurt by her lies. Update 12. The Grand Exposure. I knew I had to expose my ex to the world. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative. It was about showing the world that I wasn't the monster she had painted me to be. I posted a carefully worded message on social media, detailing the criminal activity and the cyberstalking. I included screenshots of the messages and the legal documents, all without revealing the specific legal documents. The post went viral, a digital wildfire spreading across the internet. The comments were filled with a mix of shock and sympathy, a tsunami of support that I hadn't known I needed. People from my past, from my professional life, and even people I barely knew, messaged me to offer their support and express their disgust at the betrayal. It was a digital catharsis, a public reckoning that felt more powerful than any private conversation. The post wasn't just shared, it was dissected, analyzed, and talked about by everyone who had ever known us. The comments poured in, a mix of shock and sympathy, a chorus of disbelief and support. It was a digital catharsis, a public reckoning that felt more powerful than any private conversation. My ex, who had spent months orchestrating my downfall, was now the one at the center of a public shaming. She had exposed herself, and the world had seen her for who she truly was. Update 13. The road to justice. I'm finally at peace. It's not the triumphant, fanfare-filled peace I once imagined. It's a quiet, weary peace that has been hard-won. The legal battle is over, and I'm slowly but surely rebuilding my life, piece by painstaking piece. The process has been a series of small, hard-earned victories. I have a new job at a smaller but more supportive company, a place where the culture is built on trust and respect, a stark contrast to the cutthroat environment I left behind. My new apartment feels more like a home, a sanctuary I've created for myself with no ghosts from the past. My ex is still in jail and I haven't heard from her. The last I saw of her was her mugshot in the local paper, a chilling and final confirmation of the reality of her actions. The man who was once so sure of his life, so content in his perfect little world, was now a hollow shell. My career was over. The financial and emotional damage was done, but I was on the road to recovery. I had to learn the hard way that a person can be living a life of deceit, and you'd never know until you find one small piece of evidence that unravels the entire story. In my case, it was a simple Instagram notification. I was no longer a victim. I was a man on a quest for justice. I found justice not for myself, but for the people who had been hurt by her lies. Update 14. The final chapter. I've learned more in the past year than I have in my entire life. The experience, as painful as it was, taught me a powerful lesson about human nature. The initial mistrust has evolved into a more nuanced understanding of people. I've learned that a person's capability for malice can exist right alongside their capacity for kindness. The most important lesson, however, wasn't about her, it was about me. It was about my own resilience, my capacity to fight back, and my ability to find strength in vulnerability. I have a new perspective, and I'm living my life to the fullest. I've found a new sense of purpose, a new reason to fight for what I believe in. I'm no longer a victim. I'm a survivor, a man who faced his worst fear and emerged stronger and more resilient. The story of what happened to me isn't just a cautionary tale. It's a testament to the power of truth and the human spirit. If this story resonated with you, it's a testament to the power of truth and resilience. We encourage you to engage with this message and share it with those who need to hear it. Like this video to show your support. Leave a comment below to join the conversation and share your own experiences or thoughts on overcoming betrayal. Your story matters. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to receive more compelling narratives of justice and personal triumph.